Hello, Tim here with another video, and yeah, quite an interesting one today. I've actually done some research. If you've watched my last video, I've actually been talking about going on a raw food diet. That's 100% raw food and not having any cooking. Now I did that for 2 days, but interesting enough, I had a comment on my video, the last video I believe, and so I'm sorry I can't remember the YouTube username. Sorry about that, but you know who you are. And basically questioned the healthiness of a raw food diet. Now, to be honest, that was the first time I'd even thought about it. I just had made the assumption that raw food was 100% healthy and it's definitely the way to go. And I was gearing myself up for that. And for 2 days, as I said, I have actually, or had followed that and was doing quite well because, you know, there's lots of advice out there that basically says, you know, eating lots of raw food, it's a key feature of it, like an anti-cancer diet and generally, you know, living a long life. It's very healthy for you, in other words. I guess my question was, are there advantages to eating a diet where it's all raw foods? And that's the big question, isn't it? Because there's no doubt that some raw foods, or a large component of raw foods in your diet, is very healthy. I'm not questioning that at all. But it's whether going the full 100% is the way to go. And it seems there are now, from what I've found in my research, there's disadvantages eating only raw foods, which is quite amazing because I just didn't think that was the case. Now, of course, many foods cooked are not anywhere near as healthy as the uncooked version, but not all. That's the key point here, so not all. Like for example, I think avocados and nuts, and generally speaking fruits, are a lot better for you to eat raw. So if they're actually cooked, they lose a lot of the nutrition, and there's you know, other disadvantages. So again, I'm not casting a dispersion over everything here. What I'm questioning is whether it's, you know, the 100% is the way to go. And I guess the big debate in the sort of raw food community is that, you know, from what I've read anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but they say that, you know, cooking food generally destroys, if I can get it out, 50% or more of the nutrition in foods. You know, that basically vitamins are lost because of that process. And certainly, depending on the type of cooking, that can be the case. So, for example, frying or roasting, or baking, I should say, seems to be bad, generally speaking, in terms of losing nutritional content. But in many cases, from what I've read, cooking the right way, we're talking steaming. Steaming is one example of it in the right way. Will actually destroy anti-nutrients. You know, the stuff that actually, you know, stops or binds materials in the gut, basically. So the net result of that is, by cooking of these types of foods in a certain way, steaming or with soups, you will actually increase the absorption, if I can get it out, and that means that you're actually better off eating the cooked version. Now, I thought that was really interesting. Basically, vegetable soups and steaming, you know, breaks down cellulose, so that, you know, few of your own enzymes are needed to digest and not more, because obviously the more digestion enzymes that are needed for digestion, the more, you know, the process is needed out of your body. So you're trying to reduce that. So the thing there that I found, and this is backed by some quality research, it's not just you know, someone making a statement, it's by Dr. Joel himself, Dr. Joe Fuhrman, who is someone I respect greatly with his views, and he's basically saying that it's certainly not the case, and it's not a blanket to put over to say all raw food is the way to go. So based on that, after having read it and researched a bit further, I thought, well look, no, I'm not going to continue on my 7-day raw food diet. I think for me it's not the way to go. Now, I did quite well for the 2 days. I survived quite well. On the second day, actually, the night before I stopped, I made a beautiful raw avocado dip and dipped some of my fruit and vegetables in it. And that was really quite nice. That was just basically an avocado and a bit of lemon and I think it might have been a bit of orange in it. I'm not too sure. But just two basic ingredients. Actually, celery. It was celery and avocado, I believe. And just blended it up in my Vitamix. And that was really quite nice. So again, I'm not trying to say that you know, all raw foods are bad, and of course Dr. Joel Fuhrman's not saying that either. In my research, no one's basically out there saying raw foods are bad for you. I'm not saying that. My question again was whether the 100% raw food diet was the way to go, and I'm thinking now that that's not the way to go, and probably I'm going to go to a 60, 70, maybe 80% raw food. I'm still going to have steamed vegetables, and I'm still going to have soups. In actual fact, last night I made myself quite a delicious soup. I made it in the afternoon in the crock pot, and it cooked, you know, very slowly on low heat for a few hours, and that was really quite nice. And I had about 10 different types of vegetables in there, and very healthy. And obviously, to read that research to see that more of the nutrients out of the vegetables is getting into my body eating cooked food that way is a bit of a revelation. So I'm interested in your comments, whether you agree or disagree. I'm open. I've got an open mind here. I'm certainly not going to be closed-minded on anything, and it's all a learning process, and I'm wanting to share as much of this information as I can. But based on the research that I've done now, it appears that 100% raw food diet isn't the way to go. It certainly isn't for me in my thinking now anyway. And I'm still going to have a large component of raw foods, but certainly not the 100%. So again, I'm going to leave it there for now, but I just thought I'd pass that on, my interesting bit of research that I found. And again, thanks to the YouTube user for just mentioning that on a comment. Just mentioned, I'm not sure if it's a he or she actually, mentioned just a few words about not the reasons why they weren't going 100% raw. And that was enough for me just to question myself. I thought, well, I haven't really checked that. And just out of interest, I did a bit of research and found that there was certainly an argument to be had the other way, that 100% raw food diet is not the way to go. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Everything is still on track, other than the fact now I've gone back off I originally was going to go and do that 7-day raw food diet. I'm now convinced, based on the research I've read so far, that that's not the way to go. So I'm going to go back to probably a 70 to 80% raw food diet. So in the morning, I'm still having a smoothie. Had a smoothie this morning. And for lunch, I'll often have a salad, or I may have a second smoothie. And for an evening meal, I'll probably have a soup, a stew or a soup, something that's cooked like that. Often I'll cook it as a vegetable stew, and then I'll put it in a blender and make it a soup. Or occasionally I might have some steamed vegetables. And yes, occasionally I might even have some stir fry, even though I know frying is probably losing some of the nutrients. I might do that for a bit of a mix-up from now and again. But primarily I'm going to stick to... the biggest components of my diets is certainly going to be raw food. And the other thing I'm liking is I'm having a love affair, I have to say, with dates at the moment. Dates are very nice, and I don't know whether that's because of the large amount of sugar, because they're quite high in sugar. So I'm keeping mindful of that, because I'm just, again, not wanting to go back to any old habits. So I'm questioning myself when I'm eating certain types of foods like dates with high sugar, just to make sure that this is not some sort of addiction that's building up. And I think this is important when you have come off, junk food, just to be mindful of what you're eating and not to get back into those old habits. Because, of course, often when you're eating the old way, you were eating, without thinking about it. You're just putting food in your mouth, if you're like me, without thinking about it, putting food in your mouth because you're bored, because you had some stress or whatever it was. So I think just being mindful of what you're eating is the key here. And I'm certainly not wanting to get back into any form of addiction in terms of food eating, and so I'm, as I said, very mindful about what I'm eating. So just questioning the dates, but I am loving those at the moment. But just the taste of raw fruits and vegetables is still absolutely amazing. I'm just loving the taste generally, and I'm sure I didn't have this sort of taste. These taste buds, I don't think they were alive before really tasting this fruit and veg the way they are now. So it's just interesting, isn't it, that over time, as you get off a junk food diet, I think your taste buds tend to wake up, and you tend to really see what is good for you and taste what's good for you, which of course is healthy, is the healthy fruit and vegetables. All right, I'll be back again with another email later in the week, probably tomorrow, if not the next day. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.